Hello and welcome back, and that's right, if you're watching this, it means you just got yourself a UGREEN NAS solution. Well done.
Give me one up here. Boom. Boom!
And you want to set it up right the very first time. This massive video is a complete setup guide to UGREEN's NAS systems. It's pretty much going to be applicable to any of them with a few tiny exceptions. And although it's a huge video, the reason it's so huge is twofold. Number one, because there are chapters all the way along the bottom of the screen. So if there's something specific you're looking for, you will find it down there in the chapters in the description or otherwise. And two, because I did try to make a 3-part setup guide series on the UGREEN NAS solutions. And although I did 3 parts, I had a lot of fun and games with YouTube that I'll probably tell you about in the comments why that didn't happen in the end. But in the meantime, seeing as they've updated the software, updated the hardware in some places, and improved the platform quite a lot, I thought it was time to revisit this. This is the complete guide. It's going to go through the lot. So let's get the formalities out of the way. Some of you, if you've already watched that video, you probably already know how to do the physical setup, but I do think we should talk about it. Number one, if you're going to put drives inside your system, remember you don't have to fully populate it out the gate. If you go for a big boy like this one, you can actually get away with only putting 2 or 3 drives in and expand the RAID later on, something I'll explain later on how to do that. Installing the drives is really straightforward, as you've probably already noticed. Big 3.5-inch drives don't require any screwdriver, they just go straight in. You are recommended to check out the compatibility pages from UGREEN before purchasing any drives, but I'll say right now, the majority of SATA drives work, and that is a 30 TB drive working like an absolute charm. If you're going to put M.2 NVMe's, with the exception of one system, they are all on the base. You can put them in at the beginning, don't worry, it's not going to make any difference. You just can't change them when the system's in operation. Although I will say, one exception to the rule, if you're thinking of upgrading the memory, don't upgrade the memory on day one. Because when you set the system up for the first time, let the system do its running, its checks internally, and you can always upgrade the RAM later. So don't do that on the day one. And when you are ready to upgrade the RAM, it's via that base panel that I just pointed to. Also, if you're going to install M.2 NVMe's, especially if you're going to use some of the i5 systems, which have got Gen 4x4 speeds on these, which get very hot indeed, keep in mind you can't fit traditional heat sinks inside that space. There's thermal pads that will attach to the inside of the base of the system, which you can attach them to. It slightly differs depending on which UGREEN NAS you go for, especially the little flash 4-bay. But overall, you don't have to worry about heat sinks because it's meant to attach with the fat thermal pads that would have been included with your kit to attach to the inside of the base. Now, once you've slid and installed in each of your drives, the next thing we need to do is connect the system up. Now, the first thing to keep in mind is the power cable needs to go last. We'll get onto that later on, but for now, it is your network cables. Take the network cable, connect it to port 1 on the system. You don't have to do that, but it's just easier to remember. And then you need to connect this cable to either the router that's inside your home, and then connect it into that via a LAN port or LAN port there, and then have that router either wirelessly or wired connected to either a mobile phone with the UGREEN app or a desktop laptop device with a web browser, so you can start the rest of the setup, something we'll get onto in a moment. But if you're using a network switch in your environment, make sure that when you connect the UGREEN NAS via a LAN port on that switch, that the device you're going to use to configure this is on that same network. So that is either a laptop or PC that's connected via a wire into the same switch, or this switch is connected directly to your router, and then you're using a wireless device to communicate via it into the network switch. And make sure you haven't got any VLAN separation. Again, it's very technical, and if you don't understand that, it means you haven't set them up, so it shouldn't be a problem. Bottom line, make sure the device you're going to be setting up with and the NAS are on the same network. Now, once you've done that, connect the power cable to the back of your UGREEN NAS and connect the power to the wall. Make sure everything's connected, your drives are inside, and then turn the power on at the wall and then press the power button on the system. And that's really it. Setup should take, initialization I should say, should only take around 2 to 3 minutes. And once that's done and you hear a beep, you need to make your way over to, again, a mobile device or a desktop device to continue the setup. Let's hop over. here on my Windows machine, I'm going to be guiding you through the complete setup process of your UGREEN NAS. Pretty much everything you're ever really going to need, at least for the first year or so of its deployment. I've got a pre-set up device that you can see here in front of you, but we're also going to be going through those early setup stages now. Now, the tools that you're going to need right now, if you are setting up in a desktop environment, head over to UGREEN's own website, select the UGREEN NAS that you have, and then from there you'll be able to see that there is system images. Now, if you intend to set up your UGREEN NAS completely offline, that is with no internet services whatsoever, so the NAS is completely remote and only on the local area network, but your device that you're using now is internet connected, then you want to download the system image, because you're going to need that to have the device up to the latest software. Otherwise, this will be done automatically. The tool you should probably download, however, is this one here. Depending on your operating system, you're going to need that client application. With the exception of the Android TV application, the mobile app can actually be used to set up the full device. You lose out on some of the configuration options, so do keep that in mind. So I do still recommend using a desktop experience like the one you're looking at to do so. But nonetheless, you can still do the majority of the steps in the first third of this video using the mobile app. Finally, if you don't want to install the client application, and maybe you're using a system, a headless KVM system, you're using a computer that you can't install apps on or has limited space, you can use other tools to find the NAS on the local area network. One of the latest and best I would recommend is Advanced IP Scanner. It's a free tool that you can use to scan your local area network, and it finds devices, and then from there you can use those NAS devices and then set them up to get to the IP of the device. Now, we'll get onto what an IP is later on, but for now, once you've downloaded and installed that application they're offering, this is what you see in front of you. This is a system scanning app, and what you want to do on the local area network is select LAN search, and as long as the NAS and your computer are on the same local area network, or just the same network, they're sharing the same Wi-Fi in the basic sense, you'll be able to find it. So as you can see, I've got the two NASs, and there's our new NAS that we can register. We click that, we can then enter the application setup screen. As you can see, we've not initialized. Click start. Name the NAS device. Again, go unique. I'm not going to change it, but I would recommend changing it if I were you. And then create an administrator account. Now, this is not the same as an admin account. An admin account is inside most systems that is full control, unfettered access. And most NAS systems disable this account by default for security reasons. You are creating what's colloquially known as a super user account. Now, I use this term, but you can give it any name you want. But this is going to be an account that's got pretty much nothing but power under the bonnet. So you want to give it a name, which is what I'm going to do here. You may be wondering why there isn't an option for two-factor authentication, another layer of security that allows you to double verify who you are with your mobile phone. It's quite common these days, otherwise known as OTP, multi-factor authentication. This can be added later on. It's just not currently available in the install using the client app, but we can add that later. Next, once we skip past this, it will invite you to create a UGREEN account. This can be used to remote access your system with a great deal more convenience over the internet using UGREEN server as a relay point. It does have reduced performance, but is a lot safer than opening up ports on your router. Now, you don't have to do this. You can completely ignore this if you like. It does make getting notifications and warnings about the system a lot easier, but later on in the video, I'll talk through some other options that you can choose to use. But if you want to use that, you can set it up. It's free and will allow you to remotely access your system, remotely transfer files, and receive notifications, again using their relay servers. From there, choosing your options for updates. Now, you may be using a client system, a Mac or Windows system that still has updates due. And we live in a world where updates are very frequent and on the one hand very useful, so we've got the latest, most secure software for internet connected services, but we also know that not only do we not want to power down our device frequently in order to install updates, but two, sometimes features are removed, sometimes things are changed, and ultimately a lot of users like to monitor updates for a little while before they install them, or at least do it at their convenience. And that's what this screen is about. Do you just want to be notified when updates are available? Do you want to automatically install all updates, or do you only want the most key, important, mission critical updates to be installed? I would recommend that top option, but it's really up to you. So there we go. We've now got the software installed. We've now got the system set up with a superuser account, and from here we can start setting up our storage. Keep in mind, again, if you don't want to use the client application, and if you happen to know what the network connection of your device is, so for example this has a network connection here, if we open it up of 248, I can open this up here, put in that IP, and the NAS will be accessible here via the web browser here. It's configuring UGOS, and as you can see, it's getting ready to establish that connection. But because I already have access on this account, on this client application, it's not allowing me that multi-user input control. Again, not uncommon, but just keep in mind that trying to access it via the two means simultaneously can be problematic. So now let's set up our storage. On the left hand side, click the storage option. You may have been invited to do this already, but just in case you skip that step, come from there, and then from there you'll have the overview, click create. Now from here, select the drives that are inside your UGREEN system that you want to involve in your storage pool. Now a storage pool is when you have multiple hard drives in their available space, merging a layer of storage that you're going to build on top of. Later on we're going to be creating volumes and then eventually folders, but for now this is our raw sandbox area of storage. So I'm going to select these two drives here. These are my 230 TB drives. From here I can then choose to either create a RAID 0, which combines the storage. So in the case of 230 TB drives, it'll give me 60, but with no recovery if one of those drives dies. If one dies, I lose all my data. Or I can create a RAID 1, where all data on the system is being read and written to both drives simultaneously. But keep in mind, that will effectively halve your overall storage. Now if I select a third drive, other options become available, like RAID 5, which gives me one drive of drive failure protection. Remember, not a backup, think of it as a safety net. The RAID 5 will allow you to have multiple drives and always have one disk of protection. Currently, UGREEN does not support the use of different storage drives in a single pool. So for now, all your drives have to be the same size. Otherwise, it will reduce the available storage drives dramatically. On top of that, if you want to take advantage of JBOD or BASIC, this allows you to create individual drive pools there. So choose whichever one of these options best suits your needs. Next up, we need to talk about volumes. Volumes are the next layer above a storage pool. If a storage pool is the road, think of the volume as a van, a lorry, or whatever, basically a container space of storage. Now, you can choose to fully occupy the storage pool you create with those drives into one giant storage container. But some users like to create multiple individual volumes. One for photos, multimedia, home stuff, another one for work and backups, maybe another one for surveillance, and maybe another one as a synchronized backup of one of those other pools, so they've got a synchronized area. Now, it's really going to come down to you and your own usage scenarios, but say for example I wanted to create one storage pool that's 20,000 gigabytes in size, and then after that I create another volume. You can do that later on to create those containers. But the point is, you can't do it later. If I max this out, I can't trim the fat later on. I can do it with command line, but it's not recommended doing that. So for now, I'm going to create one large storage volume, but keep that in mind. Next, file system. I recommend going BTRFS currently on the UGREEN platform, because this assigns you other benefits such as easier, faster file cloning and larger and lower system resource impacting snapshots. Another safety net option, not a backup, but definitely a recovery safety net to a point. So for now, I'd select BTRFS, but if you don't want those benefits, use ext4, as it gives you a slightly higher performance, but you lose out on some of those more integrated efficiency benefits of BTRFS. And now we're ready to go. We click create, and now it's going to create that storage pool and that volume. It will wipe the drives and you will need to re-enter your password, but that's really it. It's now creating our area of storage from which we're going to build our data repository. And if you've got a system that's got M.2 NVMe slots inside, like this here, the one that we're using in the background, as you can see, if I go to manage, I've got two M.2 NVMe's that can be used for other things. Simply select the three dots next to them, select use, and then from there different options will appear on screen that allow you to create different things. So for example, I can go ahead with those M.2s and create their own RAID 1, and then from there create volumes on top of that. It's that easy to add new storage pools and volumes on the storage manager. And just before we move on, a few little tips along the way. Number one, when you're looking at your storage areas, you can expand them over time. For example, if we click these three dots here, we can go ahead and create a new volume as described earlier on that pool, or we can go ahead and start adding or removing and replacing drives in an existing array. So if you've got a 4-bay with 2 drives inside, a RAID 1 perhaps, you can expand that into a RAID 5 by adding drives and then using the expansion options to gradually add drives. Keep in mind that adding each drive, depending on the capacity, will take between 4 and 12 hours normally. Next up, if you've connected a USB drive and you're having difficulty finding it, go into the external storage option and it should appear here. If it does appear here and you still can't find it, go into the advanced settings and this will allow you to grant access and visible permissions to that USB drive. If you're worried about drive health and want to perform periodic checks rather than, one day the drives aren't working, head into hard drive status test plan and you can create a regimented scheduled test of the drives in your system, and that can go to one or all drives whenever needed. Finally, if a drive does fail and you install a new drive to perform a RAID recovery and make sure your system is back onto the straight and narrow, keep in mind that by default the system prioritizes read and write performance on the storage array. So if a drive fails, don't forget to change RAID resync priority as the option, as this will divert far more system resources towards recovering the RAID configuration than traditional read and writes, which are already going to be hitting the system impact power efficiency quite hard. Finally, quick repair is an option you can use when, for example, if you've got a 10 TB drive and you've got 4 of them, but only 1 or 2 terabytes was actually populated with data, using a quick repair will result in, during the RAID rebuild, it will only focus on the areas where there is data and then hash out the rest. Whereas a slow repair or traditional repair will put every single binary 0 or 1 across the entire drive. It takes longer, but is a far more consistent check. If you're in a rush, however, that is an option for you. Finally, if you're occupied with power efficiency, go into the control panel and there are a few options open to you to really maximize the power efficiency and reduce wear on your drives. So for example, down here you can go ahead with power management and set the device into energy saving mode when you need to. However, when it comes specifically to the drive media, go into the power option and you've got several options open to you. Not only can you do a scheduled on and off for the system that will allow you to decide when the system is on or off, otherwise known as air gapping. It means that, for example, if you go to sleep at 11 PM and wake up at 6 AM, you can ensure the system always turns itself off and on between those periods to ensure that the system is inaccessible, using less power, and reduces wear on your storage media. The same goes that you can enable hard drive sleep and hibernation over a certain period of time when drives aren't accessed. Generally, drives have 3 states: active, idle and standby. This will allow the drives to go into that further reduced state when they aren't accessed for a certain period of time. Now we've created our area of raw storage. What about the storage that you're going to be using? Domestic files and folders available at any time. You want to make sure that you see the data you're going to use, right? Well, from that we go into the File Explorer. Now by default, when you set the device up, until you install any apps, you won't really see much in the way of folders. These folders you can see here are going to be ones that are default, such as for media or backups. Now during the initialization, you can see these pop-ups that are recommending to me to create a personal folder. Now I do think you should do that, but I'm going to cross this out so I can walk you through why. So if we cancel that there, you can see there's our shared folder area. So we want to create a shared folder. A shared folder is a folder that isn't just accessible there on the NAS via the web browser, but you want to be able to access this outside of the system conveniently. That's what a shared folder is compared to a normal folder. So if we go for a new shared folder and call this test share 1, this shared folder, we can say which volume it's on if we've created multiple volumes, whether it has a recycle bin, whether it's invisible on the local area network, and ultimately if it has a limit to how big it can get. From there, we then create our storage folder, and then if we have multiple users, something I'll guide you through later, you can say whether they've got full access, read-only access, which means they can't delete or change anything, or no access whatsoever. For now, I'm going to give this user full access. Again, if we had the full admin account in the background, that would also do it. Also keep in mind that currently the UGREEN system doesn't support guest accounts. Now, shared folders as you create them give you lots of rules for configuration. We'll talk about user account creation in a moment, but for example, where we have the photos folder here, if I want to, I can just drag and drop files directly into this. Or I can choose to upload them using the configurable options there to upload files straight into it. Once I've created a file, for example, these files here, sorry I zoomed in by accident there, we can right click and look at the contextual options in the web browser. We can copy it to different locations on the NAS, we can move it to other locations, we can zip that file up, we can create a shortcut, we can even share it with other users, either users inside the system or a remote access link, depending on the protocols that we've set up on the device for remote access. We can add passwords, we can add access limits, we can restrict the ability to download, and you can even set a validity period on that file as well. Once you've created it, you've got your 3D link, you've got the link either inside the system or externally, and you're good to go, and you can share that file with anyone. But what if you want to access the system natively? Here's a Windows Explorer desktop here, and from here I can see there's my local drives. I maybe don't want to access it via this web browser. I want to be able to use my own operating system to do so. That's where shared folders are even more useful. Now, that's the IP up there, ending in 118. We're going to need that number, so we're just going to grab that. And from there, map the network drive, enter the IP that we got earlier on. We then click Browse, and it will look through the local area network to find that shared folder there and allow us to map it and bind it to our local system conveniently. Now, if we go into the client application and we go into the files area and we look at that shared folder we created earlier on, we can right click that, and again, pretty much the same options, but it also gives us the option of having that volume there, letting us know what it is, what it's called, and the overall directories it's in. Now, as it finds it, depending on your network speed and your operating system, how long this takes will differ. But as you can see there is our DXP4800 Plus, and there are our folders. I can go ahead, select the Photos folder, click OK, click Finish, and now on my PC, I've got that NAS mounted as a remote local drive, and there are the files that I uploaded earlier on. It's that straightforward. However, you may be using more sophisticated applications and services, such as photo video editing tools, that don't play nice with mapped network drives. And although you've got it listed here, it's not visible on your operating system. You guys need to use SAN management, or iSCSI. This allows you to trick your operating system from seeing a network location into a remote that's being tricked by tricking the system to appear local. Now, again, operating systems will differ, but for this you need to go into the application center. From there, look for something called SAN Manager. You need to install that application and then open it. Then, although I've got one already set up for you here, click Add, give it a name, give it an area of storage. So I'm just going to give this a simple 10 gigabytes of space. Choose the volume that it's on, whether it's an SSD or hard drive volume is up to you. Decide whether you're going to be expanding that storage over time or it's going to be a fixed raw area of storage. Click OK. It's created that. You then need to assign it a target. I've already created a target here on the system, but if there isn't a target available, this is the pathway between the NAS and your local system. Click Add. Click select which LUN you want to use. So it's the one you've just created there. Click Next. Bind it to a target, the one that you've created earlier on, and then click OK. And now you've created that tunnel point. And if you're on a Windows system, go to the options at the bottom, type iSCSI, that's iSCSI, and select iSCSI Initiator. There are Mac tools that allow you to do this, some of which unfortunately are paid premium options. From there, go into Discovery. From there, type Discover Portal and enter the IP of your NAS into that window. As you can see, I've already done it. There's that Discovery Portal. Once you've done that, go back to Targets, and as you'll see, there are multiple iSCSI targets listed here, one of which is the one that I've connected already. Give it a moment and it will find the new one that we've not activated yet. Now select the iSCSI target you want to mount. From there, click Connect. And then from there, make sure to select multipath, because you may have multiple network connections, and this will allow you to take advantage of the full network connectivity between your client system and it. If you've created password authentication known as CHAPS, C-H-A-P-S, you can enable the CHAPS here and then enter the password that you created on the UGREEN system. Once you've done that and you've assigned it and clicked OK at the end, on your PC, open the bottom, go into the search and put disk management and select create and format hard drive partitions. And then from there, you'll see that your area of storage is visible. You just need to right click it and then you're able to add it just like any other volume and assign it a letter. Doing so will then allow that drive to be visible. I've already made a video about this. If you Google UGREEN iSCSI, you'll find it, and I go into more detail about CHAPS and exactly how to connect it. Another way to bind the NAS system to your local machine is to use that client application we talked about earlier on, and then from there go into the App Center and download an application called Backup and Sync, or Sync and Backup. Select the volume that you're going to install it on and go ahead and install this application. This is going to be a key app for you because this app allows you to create, and we'll come back to this app later as well, bind your UGREEN NAS via a local storage folder and synchronize it on the go. So if you've got an existing folder on your PC or Mac system, this is how you can establish a connection between them. When it's installed, as you can see there, open it up. It opens up in the client. You can't do this, by the way, on the remote. You have to do this on the local client. Select Sync, select Sync Task, and then from there you can sync a folder here with your on the local computer with the NAS. You select the local folder, so in my case downloads, then on the UGREEN select a folder on the UGREEN such as the test shared folder we created, and then choose whether you want them always to be synchronized, whether you want them to be only on the UGREEN NAS or only on the PC. You can even apply filters to ensure that certain configuration files, certain large files aren't synchronized because they may be too big or unnecessary. The same goes with if you've got the same file named twice, what rules you want to create. But this will allow you to synchronize 2 points between the UGREEN NAS and your local machine, and this is the same for Mac too. Now you've created a few different ways of having your storage in one place. Now you need to establish access. Now there's lots of little mini ways to do this, but I would recommend going to the control panel, going into user management, and before you create users, create groups. Groups is really important because it allows you to, if you have more than say 5 to 10 users, you can change the rules for groups of users a great deal more quickly than trying to do it for each of them. So for example, I've already created a folder for family, but say I do another one for work, and these are work, colleagues, friends, whatever, and then I can add users later. This work group will have access to Docker, it'll have access to the shared folders for read and write, but I want to completely deny access to multimedia, TV shows and more. And there you go, I've created a separate group. I've called it WOC instead of work because I can't type, but you know the point I'm making. The same goes if we want to create a backup group. I can create a backup group there, but it's been reserved by the system. So if I go for backup share, this group I can add individual users, and then from there I can say I want that backup target group to be able to read only everything because I want to back it up, but I don't want it to affect change. This is just a small example. You don't have to do this, but it gives you some idea about creating those groups. Once you've created those groups, you can create users. Now I've got my power user here that I've got remote access, and I've created a user called Alan there. But if I create a new user, I can import an existing CSV if I've got one, if I'm a business with a large number of accounts, or I can invite users via email, and if they're creating their own online codes for remote access, this allows me to do so. But to create a local domestic user, just click create, give them a name, give them a password. Apologies for everything being lowercase. From there, add their email if you want to, a description of the user, and then you can assign them either as a domestic user that has no system power but has file access, or a full administrator user. I'm going to go common user. From there, select the group you want them to be in. So I want this to be a family member. From there, select them a storage limit if you like, and you can say whether they can never change their own password. Click create. Change the individual rules if you like. That could be bound by the group or bound by the individual user, and then as you can see, some of them is already signed in because of that user group. And I can say, for example, I want to give them read write, and because I'm an admin user that I'm logged into right now, I can affect that change. But what's important is that they can't. Once that's done, when Betty here logs in, her user interface is going to be very different to that of the user that I'm already logged in with. You can set individual rules for their passwords there to make it particularly complex or easy as needed. And when it comes to their individual user when they're created in, you can even insist upon and go ahead and create two-factor authentication. And this can be done using your own recommended two-factor authentication application. So in my case, I'm using Google Authenticator. But if you go to the other NAS, we're able to go into the control panel, from there select security, from there select account security, and then you can select two-factor authentication there, and it will guide you through the process. Again, we've created a video just on this that I'll link to in the description to guide you through the two-factor authentication setup. This guides us neatly into the subject of security. Security is paramount on your system, and we have to look at internal security and external security. So for example, when it comes to the control panel and going into the security tab, some of these options I would say are vital. Auto-blocking IPs, for example. If the system, someone is trying to break in and they don't know the password, they're trying to brute force hack, you can set this to be that if someone gets their password wrong 3 times, they can't log in for an X number of minutes. And you can set that up to 24 hours and even longer if you choose to. You can even go through block management where bad IPs have come through where someone has been attempting to get in and they can't. You can add those IPs to be permanently blocked or blocked for a certain period of time. And if you know them in advance, you can even set that up. And the rules of which they come into effect and whitelists to ensure some IPs are always available are going to be on there. And IPs, by the way, extend to both mobile devices and desktop devices on the local area network. You can even enable protection from DOS attacks, but it can slow down login sometimes. But at the very least, that is another protection you've got from brute force hacking, where repeated passwords are attempted, presumably with the assistance of AI. Let's save that there. We've got two-factor authentication, account security, where you can enable security precautions as well as disabling active users on the system if you choose who shouldn't be connected. Enable a firewall. If you are using remote access to the system or your local area network has entry to the wider internet, you can enable a firewall with individual rules for specific ports to shut down all of the doorways apart from select few. But I don't recommend using this if you don't know what you're doing. Finally, certificates. These are going to be important when you're accessing the system remotely, because unlike when you're accessing it here on the local area network at the top left where it says not secure, other websites you can see from their own will have a secure connection. These are normally SSL certificates. The NAS itself arrives with an SSL certificate to be used with their own remote access protocol and access app services built into the application center. But you can use third-party ones, such as a free one from a company called Let's Encrypt, that will allow you to go into the control panel, go into the security tab, go into the certificates, and apply your own certificate if you choose to. And that will anonymize and encrypt transmission and login information every time you log into the device remotely. Next up, we have to talk about snapshots. Snapshots are an in-system fail-safe and safety net, much like RAID, but ever so slightly more incremental. Now, if we go into the App Center, you will need to install the Snapshot application there. And once you've installed it, make sure that you've got the shared folders that you need to use long term. So if we minimize that and go back into our other NAS system here, I'll walk you through snapshots. So I've already created several different shared folders here on this system for different purposes. So we've got them all listed there. If I make my way into the Snapshot Manager, I'm able to see those folders and whether I want to create snapshots. So let's look at the photos one here. We've already got to actually go for multimedia there. If we go for the multimedia folder, just click the camera, and then from there we can create our snapshot, our manual snapshot, and now it's created a digital blueprint of that data. It's not created a copy, it's just created a digital blueprint for changes there. If you want, you can have it set up to do it over time for a schedule, every day, every week, every month, how often you want it to happen, what time you want it to happen, and the retention policies, how long you hold those snapshots for, how many maximum you want to hold on to, and more. Also, you may have noticed when you're creating a snapshot, you can lock that snapshot. The reason that exists is because if you create snapshots over time, say you set it to store 500 snapshots, once you've done the 501st, it overwrites the oldest one. But if one of them's key, important, and you don't want to lose it, go ahead and lock that snapshot. Because if you lose any snapshots between this one and this one, any of these that get deleted, you can only recover as far back as you have a consistent, stable line of snapshots. To show how it works in practice, as you can see, we're just creating a snapshot there of the multimedia folder 1 minute ago. We close it, we go in to the multimedia folder, multimedia, we go into there, and I've just accidentally deleted all of the photos on that NAS. They're all long gone. If I go into the recycle bin, I'll empty the recycle bin, and now it's gone. I've completely deleted that. It's lost. What am I going to do? Well, if I go back into the snapshot, go back into multimedia, then select snapshot list, I can then reinstate the most recent snapshot, that one there. So if I reinstate that snapshot, select the 3 dots, restore it if I want to restore it, or clone it if I want to create a separate timeline in case I want to come back to the current status quo, restore the snapshot, it's restored, close it, go back into files, from files go into multimedia, Plex, and there is our photos folder fully recovered. Now, if you want to do this less on a folder level than an individual file level, that is possible as well. Go into the files area, for example. If we go into the shared folders, I go into the photos folder. I'll take one of these files like this one at the top, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to rename it wrong. It's now called wrong.png. Now, if I wanted to recover that file, I go back to an earlier state, go into the File Version Explorer. All of the applications, for the most part, need to be installed manually, but some of them are available out of the gate. Go into the File Version Explorer. From there, find the file that we deleted. So in my case, it was shared folders photo. There's our file wrong.png. Right click, go to version histories. As you can see, there's the rename, and we can download this file into its local form. So I can download that file without affecting it on the NAS and still get the early non-changed version of that file. It's that straightforward. Next, synchronization and backup. These are very similar, but not quite the same. We already touched on synchronization earlier on. Synchronization, in its most general sense, is when two areas of storage are synchronized together, so change on one either changes the other or they remain identical. To put it into perspective, here in the web browser we can create a synchronization task if we choose between this NAS and another one. This would mean that this NAS that I'm using right now would have all of my data, and while I'm working on it I can have it live synced with another NAS off-site remotely over the internet or on a local area network and have that backed up. I can even change whether I want the system to only change, I'll go through that in just a moment actually. You can enter the IP if it's on the local area network, or if you've created a remote access link, something I'll show you, you can enter it there. You can even choose to encrypt the transmission if you're worried about it being intercepted in the middle, and you just enter the information between them. As mentioned, doing this with the browser does remove some of the options. So if we head back into the application we've got installed on my local PC here, we can go in. Once again, go into the applications and services, select sync and backup, select synchronization, select sync task, and then from there we can synchronize with this local computer or that remote NAS as mentioned earlier on. The rules you can choose to do, for example, with synchronizing this computer are the same. So syncing on this computer, which we kind of went through earlier on, allow us to synchronize either the changes between both systems, the local PC and the NAS, to always remain the same, or if a change happens on the NAS, it overwrites it on the PC, or vice versa, with one of them being the power user there. You can even change filters as well via sync policies. Now that's synchronization. It's not the same as a backup, because synchronization has the danger of overwriting data and still only having one copy. Whereas a backup is when you want to create a full copy of the data elsewhere, and that allows you to have two copies of it at any given time, or one original and one copy, I should say. You can do that with a local computer, so this allows me to select one of the drives on my computer and create a copy of the data locally on the NAS. Keep in mind, this isn't the same as backing up your operating system with something like Time Machine. This is incremental file folder backups, although they are working on an OS level backup tool for Windows, and they already support Time Machine. Also, you can back up this UGREEN NAS onto another NAS system. And again, depending if you want to use remote access with WebDAV or rsync, those options open to you with the same levels of filter and control. If you want to go with an rsync server, which is a far more regimented but reliable backup synchronization tool, you can use that. It's supported on pretty much all servers, rsync, and you just need the IP address, that 192 IP. You enter the username and password, and you're good to go. We do have a full video on this coming up. I've still got to edit it, guiding you through how to back up your UGREEN NAS in either direction. Finally, you've got the option to back up individual pools. So if you've created multiple pools on your system, as we described earlier, you can use this tool to back up data between those pools and synchronize as well using the other option, and that means you can set up backups within the same system. Not the safest, because if your system dies, is broken, water damaged or stolen, you still lose all the data, but some people like using this method if you've got multiple users, for example Team A editing files and Team B distributing files. It allows the finished products here to be synchronized onto this folder here, and then they are not affecting this team's work. And if you're worried about a live synchronization or backup task oversaturating the network and slowing things down, I would recommend either A, conducting synchronized backup or sync tasks during the night when everyone's asleep, or going to the administration settings and set a speed limit, and that will ensure that the backup or synchronization task will only use a given amount of bandwidth from the machine, freeing up the rest for day-to-day activities. This synchronization, by the way, extends all the way to using third-party cloud services, and there's actually a couple of different options open to you, and soon to be a third option as well. So to put it into perspective, we can either use the option for cloud drives. Cloud drives allows you to synchronize with Microsoft OneDrive and Google Drive there. Keep in mind, this is only creating access to the data on there. You can choose to synchronize it with the local system using the sync tools, but this allows you to view cloud data and actually sort of send data back and forth, but you can't use, for example, AI tools that are based on your UGREEN NAS on that data, because it's not in system. You can only do that with a backup or synchronization task. But just clicking one of those, you'll be invited to enter your login credentials for that individual task, and then you can synchronize it and set that up. Currently, the other application for managing cloud backups is right there at the bottom, and it's known as A-List, and it allows you to connect with the A-List platform, which again you can connect with slightly larger cloud service providers there. There's still not many, Alibaba Cloud, Baidu, that kind of stuff. There's no support of things like Backblaze currently, but you can still add services that way. They are adding more services over time. So cloud synchronization, although it's possible, it still could be better right now. So this may be something we have to return to in a few months' time. Next up, multimedia. Now it's very important, if you're going to be putting multimedia in your NAS, do you use the right tools to do it, but you also configure the data in the right places. So in your file area, it is recommended to not only create a dedicated folder for your multimedia, either as a shared folder or ones from the personal folder that we'll talk about in a moment, but it's also important that you differentiate, for example, movies from TV shows, something that will come clear later. But I've already done that there with my multimedia folder for Plex Media Server. Now I mentioned personal folder there, and that is because all of the shared folders I've created so far, we are able to create read and write rules for individual users and groups to be able to access it, as well as on the local area network. But a personal folder is just for you. It is the data that only you are accessing, with the exception of an admin who can still access other personal folders. Case in point, if you go into the option there with the little briefcase, select the personal folder, this allows you to say who can access the personal folder and control the personal folders as an admin. This is where, if you are synchronizing with your mobile phone, if you're sending data directly to the system locked to your account, this is where that data will end up going. It also allows you to use more tailored access to the multimedia apps and services for you. So do keep that in mind if you want each of your individual users to have their own profile, their own identity on the system, family members, work colleagues and more. And when uploading large amounts of similar data, such as TV shows that you've gathered over the years, don't forget to try to use the file deduplicator. The file deduplicator will allow you to do several different things. So for example, if you've been taking photos for years and uploading them, you may have, from spamming the take photo button on your phone, similar files all over the place. Duplicate files will allow you to look for similar images or the exact same image. You select the folder that you want to search for, and then from there you can scan that folder to find individual files. If you want them to be the exact one to be safe, so for example the exact same file to remove the dupe, you can do that with the option at the bottom, but also look for similar files via semantic context. So for example, duplicate images, I can go to the photos folder, select to scan, and it's now going to scan that folder. I'm going to do that in the background. It's not a huge amount of data in there, but it will go ahead and find that scan and find any duplicate files there for me. So if I go back in to that duplicate file area, we can see that it's found multiple smaller thumbnails that relate to larger files there. And what we can do now, it's found tiny thumbnail revisions because somehow it's stored the smaller version of those thumbnails alongside the larger thumbnails over time. I can go ahead and delete those, and it tells me just how much data I'm going to save. And again, you can either look for viewing the scan range, and you can change it to different folders, as well as if it's a precise match or an imprecise but similar match. And as you can see, none of them are exactly the same. And you can extend that to docs, audio, video, the lot. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about multimedia management on the system. One, because it's quite straightforward, and two, because your own multimedia setup may differ. I'm going to focus on photos and video. With photos, there is our own dedicated photo appliance, and as you can see, the photos I uploaded earlier on have now been captured by the system, and it can show me the images what I want to see. So for example, a picture of me and a chap called Morgan. I've got the metadata there in the background and find out more information about the background, what took the photo and more. I can also resort into, if I choose to, a mapped version of this that I can view as a large scale map. You can see the information in a number of different ways. Now, I did that because I selected this as the library folder, that personal library. But if you haven't created a personal library, you can go ahead and select a new folder that you can add that you've created, and then make the system look for photos, and it will index those photos in there. From there, there's a lot that can be done. So for example, individual files and photos, or you can use the AI photo recognition that scan those photos to find pictures of people. If we go to the shared library, there's the rest of them, and it's found, for example, 52 photos of me. I can select that, name it me, call it Robbie, and boom, it's now found photos of me. I can find someone else, so this is Rhiannon. Boom, it's found Rhiannon, and if I choose to, I can start looking for photos of just me and Rhiannon if I pick. And again, it will find photos. You can tell it to ignore some photos as well. There's a lot of flexibility there for what you can do. That extends to locations using mapped data, geolocational data, locked in on the images. So for example, most of these are photos that took place on the south coast and some of them in London. And as you can see there's photos of me and my niece, and it tells exactly where those photos are taken. So I can browse them down by individual locations if I choose. Finally, location, not location, we can go for object recognition, where it is recognized things. Again, animals, for example. But we can also search via custom object recognition later on. We can create a brand new one, a common album, conditional, and more. So you've got a lot of flexibility in the albums that you can create. If you do want to take advantage of the AI stuff, go into tools, and from there you can change some of the models. So custom learning is when the system will learn to look for certain things. The number of models that you can assign is very adaptable. In the AI settings, there's actually loads of different AI models. People recognition, pet recognition, OCR text recognition, duplicates, the works. All of it built in for you to download and choose to use. Now, none of these are using the internet. They've downloaded it to a local model on the system. It's not using remote access. I will enable remote access again in a moment, but the key point is you are downloading AI models onto your system, and they are locked in on the system. If you don't want to use them, you can disable and turn them all off. Or I think most of them are turned off anyway, but you can choose which ones you want to use. Much like the File Explorer, sharing files is really easy. You can manage files from there, but if I choose to, I can right click an image and then I can choose to share that image very easily, again adding it to a folder or sharing the file with different users inside the system, outside the system, remote access and more. Let's enable remote access. Now, before we get onto video management on the system, I did want to talk about remote access. Now, as you can see here, if I go in and look at the system, I can see via the device, I've got the latest firmware revision there, and if I go into user management, I can see my user there, and if I go to the top right, I know you can't see it because it's just behind there, I can establish my remote activity and my accounts. But all of this extends to local access. Remote access, which is what you're going to need if you're backing up photos or video for work purposes or personal purposes on holiday from your phone. You're going to need that remote access services. So as you can see from the name of my device there, if we go into remote access, I've connected this via this remote ID. Don't worry, I'll be changing it after this video. This allows me to now access this NAS remotely over the internet. I still need to use a correct password and username. I still have to use two-factor authentication, but it allows me to now access this VLAN from UGREEN server, and again used with all of the other different services. This is included free with your system, by the way. I'd still recommend changing ports as well on the local area network for security purposes. But if you don't want to use their service, head into the App Center, and then we're doing another dedicated video on this, and from there you want to install the Docker application. Now, the Docker application is something that a lot of users are going to be familiar with. If we go in, we've already installed Docker, and then from Docker we can go ahead and start installing custom applications. In the Docker application there, as you can see, I've already installed some things. I've run different apps. They're running from installed apps from the App Center, and gradually over time applications in containerized form get added to the App Center there. One of which we're still waiting on, by the way, is Plex. But I would recommend, if you want to access your system remotely, go into this. By default you'll have the image registry on hand, and then from there search for Tailscale. Again, if the video is already live for image database even, if you do want to set up Tailscale as your remote access, I highly recommend it. It's a third-party service, but it's an encrypted VPN tunnel service to connect your devices together. So if you don't want to use UGREEN's own one, use the Tailscale one, and I will have the dedicated video on this. If it's not up already, linked below, it will be coming out very soon. But you can use this for all of the media, non-media and backup services for remote connection. It just happens to use Tailscale rather than utilizing the UGREEN one you've created there. It just creates a different URL slug, that different identity in the bar. Now, video management, the reason we've left it till a little later, there's actually different doorways there. Now, the one they're going to recommend you use is called Theatre. It allows you to scan all of the multimedia on your device. As you can see, I've chucked on some TV shows here. It allows, much like the photo application, you to add individual folders and scan the inside of the system to add new libraries, but it also scrapes metadata. That is, all of that lovely information there in the background that shows the images, shows the artists, everything that you see in applications like Plex are visible here. It also allows you to control via the HDMI output as well. Now, keep in mind, when you are using the scraped metadata, you will need to use a Google API key. Apologies, I meant a movie database key, not a Google API key. To do that, you need to go into the data source area. From there, you'll have the option for the movie database. You can create a completely free account, and then from that completely free account, create an API key. You need this for the movie database to allow you to scrape that metadata for thumbnails, art, trailers, and more. Again, set up a completely free account, go into the settings menu, go under API, and you will find it right there. Now, once you've done that, you want to go ahead and create new libraries. I've already created some here, but it's this straightforward. Select new library. From there, give it a name. So I'm going to say 1080p test media. From there, select the language, then select the folder on the local NAS. So for me, it would be my test information that I use, but you can use movies and more. Then from there, choose if you want to scrape for that metadata to add all of the background information. Then if there's any local information, to gather that as well. So if you have thumbnails saved locally, you can use those. And then grant permission to individual users. Once that's done, click OK, and then the system will start scanning for that information and then start adding it to the home page there. So as you can see on the left, there's our 1080p test media. It started finding it, but it's had an incorrect scrape of metadata there. So again, do double check the scrape metadata, and if things aren't correct, you can go in, click the 3 dots and rescan as appropriate, or replace existing data, so you can always recheck it there. On the subject of metadata and thumbnails, by the way, don't forget, if you go into the control panel, you can, via the indexing service, force the system to start looking once again for new data on the system. It takes time, and it will do it every time new data has been added, by the way, but if you need to action it manually, that's how you do it. Now, I mentioned that isn't the only way to enjoy your media. And although the theatre application and its control, by the way, of the HDMI output is a good application, I would still recommend, at least on the UGREEN NAS now, third-party ones such as Jellyfin and Plex. Now, Plex on UGREEN, as compares, I've already made a full video on how to install Plex on a UGREEN NAS system. I even wrote an article as well to guide you through it, because currently that is not available to install via a one-click application, but Jellyfin is. Jellyfin allows you to create exactly the same thing as Plex Media Server completely for free. As you can see, I'm not going to guide you through how to use Jellyfin. You can work that out for yourself, or we've done videos on that. It's that straightforward. You can add it via the App Center. You go there, you find Jellyfin on here, and once you've found Jellyfin, you one-click install. So let's do that. Once you find Jellyfin, install it, select which repositories can access it, as you can see there, then click open. It will open in this new tab, and then, not dissimilar to their own multimedia application, click the 3 lines and then start adding libraries. Each of these libraries, if we go into the settings menu there, I can select the different options there, go into the dashboard, and then from there select libraries, new libraries, add a new library, content type, movie type, and boom, exactly the same thing. Add those folders. It's that straightforward. Once that's done, again, you can access your media on here natively with everything from photos to music, and of course taking advantage of transcoding as well. Now, as we conclude this video on your first proper all-encompassing setup of this system, I'm going to end this on a few tips and tricks to get by on the system quickly. Number 1, don't overlook universal search. Universal search is great. It searches the whole system for any file or folder. You can select individual specific repositories, folders, and more, and it will search it effectively in the background. You can also use the search bar built into the top as well. Next, if your system seems like it's using a lot of hardware, go into the task manager and you can monitor not only the hardware right the way down to the individual drives, but CPU, GPU, memory and volume, and if the drives are working hard, but also the service processes as well. You can't disable them, but you can at the very least monitor a lot of these processes here. If you're more specifically looking at analytical information on the storage drives, go into the storage panel, and even though you've got all of this information here, at the bottom you can add more widgets. These widgets will give you real-time information about what's going on in your system relating to individual tasks, hard drive performance and more. So if you're looking for analytical information specifically about storage, I recommend going through those options. Next up, remember all apps that I've talked about are available in the App Center as mentioned earlier on, but if you're disconnecting your UGREEN NAS from the internet, you can, on a PC like this one that does have internet access, go to the download center. From there, go into the apps, download each application manually onto your local computer, and then from there on the UGREEN system, select the settings menu. From there, make sure that you've got auto updates enabled, by the way, in case the app you're running needs the latest version. And then from there, select manual, and then from there, select the file you've downloaded, and you can install it manually without the internet connected. If you want to stream multimedia from the UGREEN NAS in the most low resource consuming way possible, the best 2 ways to do it are as follows. If you want to use music, use the dedicated music app. That goes to your phone, by the way, so if you want to use your NAS instead of something like Spotify, you can create a streamable music database using the music app. Again, the only reason I don't go into more detail here is because generally if you're going to install Plex or MB, those do a great job as well with MB Jellyfin or Plex Amp do a great job there. But on the local area network, your smart TV, your PlayStation, use DLNA. It uses a system of Digital Living Network Alliance devices, that is low resource multimedia streaming devices, smart speakers, smart TVs, that sort of thing, and allows you to create different connections to your multimedia to stream over the local area network only. They can't affect change. There are low admission security protocols there, so it can't really do much, but it does still allow you to stream multimedia locally, easily, on a file breadcrumb manner. Next up, if something goes wrong with your system and you've enabled remote access, or you've connected the mobile application to the system, go into the logs area and you can set up rules for notifications. So you either get automatic rules where you get all of them, or ones that are dedicated to individual levels of severity or involving certain keywords. So if you want one that involves the word hard drive, because you want to know if a hard drive is getting hot, a hard drive has failed, you can do that. Or if you've got a specific volume or a specific user, you can enter that keyword as well. And you will receive a notification via the connected account that you set up with the UGREEN service, or if you've added a different means of remote access there. And again, you can go into the record of different notifications if you've got a lot of them and you want to cycle through them. Finally, another security measure to keep in mind, go into the file service area and ensure that you are not using any means of remote access to the system that you don't need. What I mean is, Samba or SMB is probably the most common one to find your system on the local area network. But if you go through these and, for example, NFS is enabled, disable it if you're not using it. Leaving these open will only result in the system being remotely accessible and open to an exploit or a vulnerability on a third-party system that you may not know about. Finally, remember earlier on when I said you could restrict the bandwidth flow and the internet flow with some of those backup and sync applications and services? Well, the way to really nail that down is to go into the network option here where it lists your network connected devices and network connections. Go into data control and then select add. From there, you can choose to not only limit individual ports that you've set up on the system to have limited data flow or complete severing of data flow, but you can also set bandwidth restrictions for individual port connections and services on the physical connections of your device there. So if you've got 2 ports and you want one of them to be the priority, you can do that very easily. And finally, if you think you've set your device up wrong for the first time and you want to start from scratch, there's actually a few different options open to you rather than just formatting the whole system. Go in to the control panel, go to the very bottom option, update and restore. It will find the latest updates, and by the way, if you did download an update, you can manually upload it there. If you go to the restore settings, this allows you, if you want, rather than restoring the entire system, you can just reset the configuration settings rather than deleting all of the data. You've got those options open to you with restore just the network to default network settings. And from there you can also create a configuration backup. Now what is this? This is all of the user data, all of the file data in terms of the layout rather than the data itself, and you can download a local backup of your configuration, and once that's done, if the system has had a bunch of changes, you've changed a bunch of stuff and you're not happy, you can go ahead and restore that configuration either from your UGREEN account that you've uploaded onto the cloud if you've connected that service, or that local file that I just downloaded there. It all goes straight in and allows you to synchronize it easily and restore a lot of those configurations and settings. And finally, I need to talk about the security application here, because it's something that I've actually criticized a lot on this platform, but the brand tell me it is going to get better. Now, their security application, the reason I've not touched on it in this video yet is currently at the time of recording, it really only prevents viruses and malware. When you're uploading files, if there is a virus or a malware on them, it will quarantine them, it will remove them, it will delete them, and that's great. But what you want is the ability to stop people accessing your system remotely without permission, or handling or using vulnerabilities on the system to affect change. So If you are worried about viruses and malware, you can set up a scan of your system and it will do the job. Just bear in mind it does not scan the system for IP identities. It doesn't scan for any vulnerabilities, weak passwords. It doesn't scan for things like leaving IP blocker off, having too many services on that aren't being used. But UGREEN do say they are increasing and improving this service to include that later. So include it here in the video because it may be added by the time you get hold of your UGREEN NAS. But there you go. That is the complete first-time setup guide for the UGREEN NAS platform. I know it's been a long video, and obviously on the bottom of the screen are absolutely loads of chapters, which hopefully will get you to the areas you need to know about. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please either sub to the channel, which is always lovely, but support the work that we do here at NAS Compares, either by using the links in the description, that by clicking those and taking them to individual stores, whatever you buy results in a commission to us, which we use to keep this thing going. Or you can support us on Ko-Fi, Patreon or YouTube memberships with your donations, but it's really up to you. But apart from that, look forward to more guides on UGREEN NAS systems, and I hope I can be as helpful as possible to you in the future with your data. But apart from that, I will see you next time.